it's very, very important to involve the principal actors, the local farmers, in the construction or building local policies that it provides better conditions, better requirements, that it include there in all the actions and strategies of this territory.
Hello and welcome to the Power of the Public Plate podcast, brought to you by ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, and the UN One Planet Network, with your host, myself, Josefine Hintz, based in ICLEI's Berlin office, responsible for global initiatives of sustainable, innovative, and circular procurement.
And I'm Peter Defranceschi, running ICLEI's Brussels office and global food program. ICLEI is a European and global network of local and regional governments committed to integrated, sustainable development.
And the UN One Planet Network works as a multi-stakeholder community across 6 programs, one of which is committed to the implementation of sustainable public procurement globally.
In this podcast, we explore the stories of champions of food procurement around the world.
In each episode, we bring you insightful and inspiring stories of how the public sector can influence the food value chain by leveraging its purchasing power.
Join us as we talk to public sector staff, policy advisors, and experts to learn how to support smallholder farmers, serve healthy and nutritious meals, source locally and climate friendly.
In this episode, we travel to Manta in Ecuador, where we talk to Mirian Johanna Zambrano Benavides.
Johanna is the project coordinator of the Feeding Urbanization FAO Ecuador project. She has more than 9 years of experience in territorial planning and monitoring of mitigation and adaptation measures to climate change in the agricultural sector.
Johanna also works on the design and implementation of local strategies for resilience and sustainability of food systems.
In this episode, we learn that Manta City is one of the first examples of local food procurement complementary to the country's centralized model.
Wow, that sounds interesting. And in our conversation, we explore the benefits of this local approach with regards to healthy diets and regional supply chains.
Without further ado, let's hear from Johanna. She's really one of the catalysts of this impressive project.
And we bring to you Mirian Johanna Zambrano Benavides.
A warm welcome to you, Johanna. It's really an honor to sit down with you and explore your work in Manta in Ecuador. It's really, really nice to talk to you today.
Thank you, Josephine. It's a pleasure for me. It is here in this moment with you.
And I'm so curious, and I think our listeners would really appreciate to know a bit more about Manta. If you can tell us a little bit more about the city and the role of food.
Okay. I will talk about the Manabi, the region of the Manta. Manabi is a region located in the coastal area of Ecuador. It's the third more populous province of the country. It's characterized for being a coastal area with a large part of its territory below 1,000 meters above sea level. Also, the connectivity infrastructure in this territory has potentialities such as the seaport of Manta and the state road network that crosses the province and connects with important land terminals such as Santo Domingo and Guayaquil. Our economy is based mainly on agricultural livestock, aquaculture, and fishing activities, with around 39% of the economically active population dedicated to this sector. Within the administrative division by the regional government, Puerto Viejo, along with the permanent Rocafuerte, Manta, Montecristi, and Jaramillo from the metropolitan administrative region. Other point is this region has a diversity of landscapes that give it diverse productive characteristics. Generally, cereals are produced in the valleys, crops and other products like cocoa are found in the hills, while fruit trees are found in association with coffee and cocoa. There is also the availability of sea and land protein. The center of the province, constituted by the Puerto Viejo, has the role of dry port since the distribution and commercialization of products from all over the province and from outside of it. However, it's important to note that in the urban part of intermediate cities such as Puerto Viejo and Manta, there are problems of food insecurity, mainly due to the lack of access to healthy and nutritious food. It's a general view of the territory that Manabi.
It's really, really nice to get this picture of this agricultural character of the region, and also learning about some of the key challenges that you mentioned, namely the issue of access to healthy food. And I'm really excited to start diving into the project you're working on, right? The Feeding Urbanization project, where exactly the sourcing healthy local food is at the core. Can you tell us a bit more kind of about the project, how it kind of started, and what's kind of the central idea?
The procurement project started as a part of a broader FAO project intended to structure and institutionalize a food governance mechanism in Puerto Viejo, as well as to develop a local food policy. Within this framework, food procurement for schools has been identified as one crucial element and main try point to strengthen local food governance. The initiative aims to contribute to improving the food security and nutrition of Puerto Viejo inhabitants, especially to the 40,000 school children in urban educational establishments and the small producers, which represent one of the most vulnerable groups in this region. To achieve the goals, local institutions, both of the department and local and the municipal level, are supported in the implementation of the new organic law of school food and 2020. This law guarantees children the right to food and nutritional in sustainable manner through inclusion of natural, fresh, and varied food, taking into consideration the interculturality of the student population, but the development of the local economy and family farming, and incorporating processes of oversight, participation, and permanent co-responsibility of the educational community. Despite the new law, in Ecuador, school food procurement is characterized by a centralized system in which contracts are currently awarded to a few large corporations through reverse auction catalogs for the supply of a set of industrialized food items, making very difficult to the linkages with the local agriculture and the introduction of fresh and diversified food. This is the most effort that I that doing. Through the procurement project, support is provides not only the local institutions but also the local scale producers and family farmers, thus better linking public food markets with local supply and providing broader benefits not only in the terms of nutrition but also in the terms of economic and rural development.
It's really inspiring to hear this, let's say, very holistic approach that you're doing with this project, not only looking at the local economy but actually linking it with nutrition. And as you mentioned, and I do want to unpack just for a moment the procurement system a little bit more. You already mentioned in Ecuador, normally it's centralized, the food procurement there, it's normally going through a few big companies, which is often then linked with highly processed food items that are then served in, for instance, school canteens. How is your project different, and how can you, let's say, make an exception to the centralized procurement system? How is it possible?
Well, as we mentioned above, the procurement model adopted in Ecuador for school foods was a centralized one, managed by the central government. So this model imposed many challenges for this for the inclusion of local farmers and products. So it was important, therefore, to implement changes to move towards a more sustainable model, which will allow complying with the nutritional, social, and economic objectives of the new law. We could identify some challenges in this process. First, we can mention challenges on the policy and decision maker levels, both central and decentralized institutions, due to knowledge gaps about the current school feeding regulations and its practical implementation. Besides the fact that the new law, organic law of school food, forces the achievement of context-specific goals such as local economic and rural development. So far, local institutions have played a marginal role in a public food procurement programs for school feeding. Also, challenges related also to the adopt procurement process, and in particular to certain participation requirements such as the registration at the online platform and the need of specific certification schemes, which were very difficult to comply by the local and smallholder producers. So, with the project, we can change these 2 points and work with the local farmers and strengthen linkages rural and urban.
Right. So to overcome this barrier of all the kind of bureaucratic hurdles, for instance, right? And so kind of let's focus on the farmers a little bit more. Kind of what is their reality right now, and what's the, let's say, the change you want to create through the project?
Well, the farmers, the project aboard with 3 points. First, a survey to understand the needs of the small producers and cooperatives. It was started with a mapping of producers, and since mapping producers and organizations according to the productive dynamics and season of products. In this case, of pilot on Orange, through field trips by the technical team of the district and provincial governments, volumes and production were estimated. Two, development of capacity building programs that allows cooperatives and producer organizations to meet the administrative and legal requirements of organizations. The starting point was to comply with the administrative requirements of the United Register of Taxpayers and the accreditation by the Popular and Solidarity Institute of Popular Economic. At the same time, support was provided on legal aspects concerning the constitutions of the organizations, as well as support has been provided to the technical teams of the local government for them to support similar process with other producers organizations in the future. And the last ones of cooperative of producers organization is registered as a suppliers. The invitations to participate to tenders is automatically sent through the platform to all suppliers located in the area where fund purchase has to be done.
Right. I think this is really interesting to what you shared, these 3 points, and just to understand it a bit more. So one aspect is really to strengthen the capacity of the local small farmers to know how to work towards supplying to the public sector market. But actually, another angle here is not only about training the farmers or the suppliers, but to create an understanding at the local government level, right? So to train the procurers of how to do the procurement differently, that it's friendly towards the farmers, right?
Yeah, it's very important the decision maker levels and the commitment to them. In fact, the local government of province, its commitment to scale up the pilot, the piloting to the 22 municipalities that it has.
Wow. So that's also the plan, not to do just one, but actually to share this model and apply it elsewhere.
Yeah, the challenges and the commitment to take the local government, it's to provide to 22 municipalities to the model of more friendly to access and strengthen the linkages urban and rural.
Yeah, so you have that commitment, right, at the local level to really invest into that, let's say, uh, local partnerships. Can you kind of explain what are the advantages of this? Just to kind of take a step back and kind of explain to our listeners why is it so important to build these linkages?
I believe it's both of them. The procurement model where plotting represents an opportunity to provide children with fresh, local, and culturally appropriate food, contributing to their nutrition and food security. It's at the same time an opportunity to support small local farmers and cooperative or organizations so increase and stable market access and support the production and broader consumption of certain types of products. As mentioned before, the main reason for our efforts around local food purchasing was to support the implementation of the new school feeding legislation. The legislation has among its objectives to use school food procurement both as an instrument to promote the nutrition of school children with fresh, culturally accepted products and support the local economy and agricultural development, as well as to support local farmers and their cooperatives through the access to public market opportunities. With the existing procurement model, this was not happening. This new and local procurement model was the way we found to do it and achieve these multiple objectives. Beside that, and in the framework of our urban food agenda, locally sourced food for public procurement programs is also an entry point to strengthen the rural-urban linkages. So these programs can be implemented to catalyze food governance mechanisms at local level.
That sounds all really amazing and very tempting as a model. But I'm sure there are also some challenges, right? I mean, we always say there is this advantage from sourcing locally, working with small farmers, but I'm sure it's not that easy, right? It's not that straightforward. What were some of the challenges that you're facing or have faced?
There are different challenges. I think the principal challenge is the commitment of central government because the policy food is centralized. So it's the most important challenges that I will effort.
And what do you mean by commitment from central government?
Uh, with this piloting, this model is inspired to promote the insertion of fruit. Also, when the procurement process is not friendly with the local farmers, yeah. So with the CERCOP, is Secretaría de Compras Públicas, it's building a new policy to improve the policy, the actual policy. So it's the challenge right now with it.
So it's also like I understand kind of a challenge really for the scaling out kind of, right? However, I'm also interested, and maybe you can kind of share a bit more if we just focus, for instance, on one city for a moment, and let's say um, the new collaboration with the local farmers. What are some challenges there? Kind of, if you think about how it will work in the future, because it's a new way of the supply chain, right? For instance, the new ways of delivery, is it very simple to establish all the logistics? How does that look like?
Within the framework of the FAO project, which has the intermediary city of Puerto Viejo as main target right now, Manabi regional government has shown a concrete interest to scale up the approach in other cities. Theoretically, if the law is building to access the local farmers to platform, but in practice, it's still a big challenge, especially for the administrative requirements that they have.
Yeah, thank you for that answer. And I do want to also explore a few other aspects of the project, but maybe as a last question about the collaboration with small farmers, how will it look like, the collaboration? Will there be dialogues before procurement? Will there be other meetings? For instance, is it as straightforward as that, kind of getting together, or how will the work look like?
They are involved in the meetings to construct the law, the new law. So it's yeah. The our farmers that are including the piloting, they are participate in the meeting to construct. I beginning the actions. It's the start, but I will in this year and to 2022 I continue to construct the new law to set up. So they include in the meeting and the um, other spaces to collaborate in the lines, in the general lines, and in the specific requirements for the future.
So it's really amazing to hear that the farmers are involved in building this new piece of legislation. Would you say that actually looking at food procurement, having the right law in place, is that the game changer? Is that the most important bit to get right as a government?
It's the opportunity. In fact, the actions that we are testing in the project open a big opportunity for them. So we can visibilize the efforts of local farmers. So it's taking a protagonic role in the construction of the policy.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. I think a lot of governments or other guests that we talked to as well, some of them really outlined or emphasized the importance of having the right legislation in place. But I think in many cases, it's not just right yet. It's sometimes rather a challenge to work with the legislation right now.
It's the beginning, but I think that it's a long way. So, especially the commitment of local government is it's the most important step that they provide the space in these national meetings.
So you would say the local governments in Ecuador, they play a very important role towards changing the whole, let's say, country level legislation, or let's say commitment to sustainable food.
Yeah, because there are decentralized actions. So the local governments will provide the uh, um, tools and local policy that it's calling up to the national policy. So it's important, again, the commitment and the local governments with the policy and including resources, economic resources to implementing the action.
One question that I would like to pose is really about indigenous people because Ecuador is very has a strong indigenous identity. I also find it quite amazing because Ecuador is rich in biodiversity, in indigenous peoples, but also this division in three parts, right? The costa, which is very lively, and then the Andean region, which is a bit slow paced with and different indigenous, and then the Oriente, more the let's say the rainforest. But I wonder in the whole food production, logistics, let's say in the whole food chain, and also supply, to what extent are the indigenous people involved, or do they play a role?
In the target area of this project, we are in the coastal region. So a considerable part of the population identify itself as Montubios. That is considered as an indigenous population. This population is mainly likened to agricultural production, logistic, and food retailing. So these actions, it's same to the other region, Sierra region and Oriente region, with the methodological and practices that are will proven.
So would you say that in terms of supply of small and medium-sized enterprises, of small farmers, also the indigenous people and organizations and businesses benefit, or is that rather difficult for them to join in?
It still is difficult to access to the platforms to public supplies.
It's rather the big ones, the big companies.
Yes, for companies to provide to the centralized platform. So it's an opportunity. They could piloting to prove the access with the local government. So local government, local province governance, they buy the products to the local farmers.
So you buy the food directly, but are you also dividing it or considering dividing certain parts of the food in a small lots to say, okay, this we could, let's say, procure from a very small farmer or very particular one, or maybe one linked to an indigenous people? Is there a possibility, or is that difficult?
Is there a possibility, especially in the construct of the new law, there are extra points to these characteristics to the organizations that have indigenous people? It's part of the Economia Popular y Solidaria. It's a denomination that we have. So there are extra points in the qualification to access.
And I'd be really interested to hear a bit more in terms of if you want to scale this model to 22 local governments, still their, let's say, context in terms of the type of vegetables or fruits, and also depending on the season, it will vary. So what is your recommendation to the local governments in terms of where to start? Like, would you recommend, for instance, to focus on one fruit or a certain vegetable? Kind of how is the approach of the model kind of to accommodate for the local different context?
It's important to the local government know the territory. So I can suggest that they can begin with the fruit. The volume is high, so I recommended that it's a first step beginning with the fruits, then or fresh products.
And so that's something that the government staff can learn from the farmers, kind of how the harvest will look like in a year, and how much will be available from, let's say, this fruit and that fruit. And perhaps can you share a few examples of the fruits that we're talking about to make it more tangible?
Yeah, the temporary fruits, it's important to know the calendar to disponibility of volume. So in Manabi, in the example of Manabi, they have very clear the distribution of your territory, the dynamic product, the productive dynamic. So they have fruits in the north and vegetable in the in center and other type of fruits in the south. So in temporary, also they have the knowledge of this volume they can buy to the local farmers. So it's important, very important, the mapping of the cooperative and the organizations and the state of the production and the stock.
One question that I had, and I think you haven't really tackled that yet, is education. Is that part of the school food nutrition and procurement to also educate the children to understand, make them understand about the food culture? You mentioned, around the Costa, or where the food comes from, special dishes. Is that part of the procurement, would you say?
It's the culturally appropriated, and it's also done the supply with the educational nutritional education. So we have the GABAs, guías alimentarias basadas en alimentos. So it's the complement to the provide to the feed to the schools the fruit. So it's together. The provided the fresh fruits, so the nutritional education with the foods appropriate, nutritional, and etc.
Thank you. And how would you describe, how would you see it in general, the impact of procurers and the role of the procurers with the food value chain from, let's say, farm to fork? Where would you say, what would you tell procurers in terms of when they purchase food, where they have most impact? Also, in your thinking about your specific project.
There are big effort, a big challenge, pardon, big challenge. There are a lot of efforts to farm to farm, for example. So it's the local policy still not the conditions to facilitate or to improve these linkages. So because this point in the project we can choose with the so provide with the food the educational food in the schools.
And to understand a bit better, if we imagine kind of a procurer working in Manta, in the future with your policy being implemented and scaled out, how will their role change? Or how important is the role of a procurer in implementing the program?
When I can say it's the most important, the local government it's making one part, but to scaling up to the country, we need the commitment of centralized because they also buy to the local farmers. So this experience can provide to the central government the tools and and the lines, general lines to construct a better policy.
So what you're saying is that, let's say, the procurers working at a local level are not only very important to implementing the changes there in the cities, but actually also to make sure it all works well and they capture the experience and advise towards the central government in terms of how they can do better food procurement.
Yeah. Also, with the decentralized government in the province, we have other institutions that that decentralized governments, but this is very difficult to access to the local producers, local farmers. Uh, so it's the opportunity to change this problem.
Yeah, thank you. It sounds indeed like a really big opportunity that you have right now, and also with the timing, with the change of legislation, with the FAO supported project you're working on. It sounds very, very promising.
Indeed. And I also wonder how this, how do you see the potential of that inspiring the rest of the region? You said this is now in the coastal region. So I wonder, how do you see the chances, or is there already interest from the Andean region, or I don't know, the rainforest region, Oriente, to take that up, or any other regions, maybe in other countries?
Yeah, this is the objective. In fact, we beginning with one city in coastal region, in one province, Puerto Viejo. Puerto Viejo City, Manabí province. So then the local government, local province government see the action and the impact with the local farmers, they commitment to scaling up to the all province. It's 22 municipalities. So this is a very good example to take the other regions. Considering Manabí is the third province in extension in our country. So and the population the same is the third important province in Ecuador.
Thanks a lot, Joanna. We usually wrap up by asking for final words of wisdom. I mean, we heard already a lot of inspiring, pioneering activities from your side. But imagine you have now a group of procurers around you eager to hear from your experience a final words of wisdom. What would you tell them to transform the food system through procurement, and impact the food value chain? What would be some advice you give them on the way? Some words of wisdom from your side.
I think that it's the opportunity to generate the change in our cities. There are a good example, the commitment of a local government, it's important to create better conditions to local farmers and diversity of their economy. Also, improve the conditions of food security in the urban areas. So these rural urban linkages, is strange with these efforts.
That's very inspiring, and from what you were saying, I gather it's really an opportunity not only to create, let's say, diversity in the food and the nutrition that is being provided, for instance, in schools, but it's also about a diversity of economic actors to use the opportunity you have in Ecuador with this alternative local procurement to really diversify the suppliers and farmers that are involved in the public food market.
Really, I think it's very important to involve the principal actors, the local farmers, in the construction or building policies, local policies, that it provides better conditions, better requirements, that is include there in all the actions and strategies of this territory. And with these examples, we can reply in other spaces of the same country or the same region, that we improve the conditions, the life condition of the rural and urban people.
This is very inspiring. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And I really can't wait to hear how your policy and the project will roll out and implement in Ecuador. So thank you so much, and all the best for the next steps.
Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity to share the actions that we can take in this territory. Uh, the next step is scaling up, and we can work for this.
Such an interesting conversation with Johanna, and I'm really impressed by this project, really finding this alternative to the centralized food procurement system, looking at what is possible at a city level. I think it's really impressive that they're making these first steps, and also this idea that they want to scale up this model. I'm really curious to see where this is going.
Indeed, I fully agree, Josephine, because as we heard, it's a centralized procurement, and then again, they try to include local producers, which will not be an easy task and quite challenging, because the more central, the bigger the suppliers. So I think it's really a good story, and bravo for all the efforts to Joanna, I must say. So thank you again, Joanna, for joining us on the Power of the Public Plate podcast, and for your amazing work in Manta.
And to learn more about the local food procurement project in Manta, check out the episode description.
And if you like this episode, you can support us by sharing it with your colleagues and friends.
We also invite you to listen to all the other episodes of this podcast and to connect with us on Twitter or on the websites at the UN One Planet Network, as well as ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability.
Thank you so much for listening. Bye bye.
Thank you.